I have a thought experiment, and its purpose is to describe that individuality is a much foggier concept than we tend to think of it as being. And the thought experiment will, if I'm lucky, show that it's possible to actually have someone prolong their life through them dying. And let me explain by just diving into the thought experiment. So, it's 500 years in the future. Asteroid miners live and work in space stations in the asteroid belt. A soldier named Beth has been hired to defend one of these space stations from space pirates. She has a husband who works far away on Earth. She also has a son back on Earth. They come to visit her whenever they can. Whenever approaching space pirates are detected on the space station's long range scanners, Beth is alerted and prepares to attempt to fend off the space pirates. She immediately walks down to a room containing hundreds of adult clones of herself that have never experienced consciousness. Beth then plugs a cord into an outlet in the back of her head, presses some buttons on a control panel, and copies her memories and personality into as many unconscious clones of herself as she believes will be needed to fend off the space pirates. And then the clones with their memories awaken within a few seconds. After awakening, all Beths, including the original, have nearly the same memories except for minor differences, such as different clones remembering awakening in different parts of the room, and the original having a few more seconds of memories than the clones do. All the Beths perceive themselves as having the same right to the identity of the woman named Beth, who they each perceive themselves as being. Each of the Beths, including the original, then enter into a single pilot fighter spaceship and fly off to fight the space pirates. The Beths have never lost a battle to space pirates. No battle has ever lasted more than a few hours. Each time they defeat a group of space pirates, the surviving Beths engage in the same ritual. They shut off their spaceship engines and drift through space. They then all take pink pills out of their armrests, all except one of these pills is instantly and painlessly lethal. One of the pills is a sugar pill. Whoever received the sugar pill had been determined randomly. Each Beth is fully aware of the high likelihood of their body being destroyed by a pill, and yet they all always voluntarily ingest the pink pills. The spaceships housing the deceased Beths then eject the bodies of their occupants into space and automatically follow the spaceship of the last surviving Beth back to her space station. So what we have here is a group of women, and they all take a pill that will kill all but one of them. From our perspective, this is mass suicide, more or less. So why do the Beths do it? Well, again, they do so voluntarily, so it must benefit them in some way, or maybe it benefits their families. Well, they all share the same memories, nearly so. The battles never last more than a few hours, according to the thought experiment. So that means they all start off with identical memories. So their memories are never going to diverge much. Let me give another similar thought to you to ponder a bit. When I go to sleep, I lose memories from the day before. Throughout my life, I've lost many memories. I'd say, a very different sort of person than I was when I was 5, for example, and yet I still think of me as the same me when I was 5. The Beths, their memories are a lot more similar to each other and their minds and bodies are a lot more similar to each other than my mind now was to mine when I was 5. So, if one of them dies painlessly, because the pills are painless, you could look at it like they lose a maximum of 2 types of things. One would be those memories. 2 would be if they fear death, that could be a loss. If they don't perceive themselves as continuing on through their fellow Beths, their surviving Beths, that could be something depressing to them. But what if they perceive themselves as continuing on to the last surviving Beth? What if I'm about to take this suicide pill and I think, well, that other entity has my mind, nearly so. It has my memories, it has my DNA. It's a perfect genetic and physical copy of me. It has more in common with me than I have with myself from a year ago. I think I'll continue on to that. I'd say that's quite a reasonable thought process to have. It's really, if so long as you look at it that way, so, to the extent that you can get rid of the sense of fear, what's happening to the Beths, I'd argue, is not really any different from the cells in my body naturally dying and being replaced by new cells. And that's how death has prolonged the Beth's lives. Because they're soldiers. Soldiers have dangerous lives. So if you can clone, say, 8 of yourself, that gives you 8 additional lives, right? If you believe that your life continues on through those clone, well, an important part of it, the most important part of it would be the memory uploading in addition to the cloning. Because without your memory, I'd say that your mind is the most important part of what you are. But, if you have 8 people with nearly identical minds and you perceive yourself as continuing on to them, you essentially have 8 lives. So why do they kill themselves, though? Well, one reason is because, Beth is married and has a son, and her husband may not have agreed to. He agreed to marry Beth. He may not like the idea of being married to 8 Beths. Beth may not want to alter her life through splitting up her possessions with 8 different people. And if there are 8 Beth, a major part of what the negative of death is our discomfort with it. So if there's only one Beth that survives, with a very similar life as she had before the space battles, I'm thinking that's going to provide a lot more convincing sense of continuation of self than if I'm looking in the eyes of my fellow clones with my mind. If I see someone else, that's going to kind of kill the perception that I'm living onto them. So that's another factor. So I think that so long as Beth perceives herself as continuing on through her clones, she literally does. Now, if she does not, then what she's doing is something more like making a sacrifice for her job, maybe perhaps so that her family receives a paycheck. She'll never see her family again. She's sad, but they'll still have their mother. And I find that interesting to think about. Its perception can change whether she lives or not. So why does perception change whether she lives or not? Because, if, let's say we insist that Beth definitely lives on through her clones, regardless of what her opinion on this issue is. Well, then if you tell her that she fears death, she's going to feel like she's a lot more alone and scared, and her sacrifice for her family is being ignored. And that's bad. That will help this death of hers be all the worse. So we don't want to define it that way. Or if we say that she never lives on through her clones, that she always just dies, that all her clones are different people, then well, if we insist that to her, then that turns a circumstance that could be just something very healthy and beneficial to Beth into something that's much more depressing and stressful to her, and that we discourage her from embarking in. So it's kind of how things work, and I think that illustrates what I am is really not as concrete as I tend to perceive it as being. That's about it, I think.